Allison.
Hi, Michael.
Welcome everyone to Dean's Discuss COVID-19, our weekly podcast. And we're going to dive into the research done here at UC Davis, both at the School of Medicine as well as the School of Veterinary Medicine.
And today we're going to talk about innovation that's happening right here at UC Davis School of Medicine on the UC Davis campus and the School of Veterinary Medicine. And it's all going to be aimed toward COVID-19.
That's a great topic too, because there's so much innovation going on. And, you know, they say in any good crisis, sometimes that brings out the most creative thinking about, you know, from people. And we see that all over the nation, and certainly here at UC Davis. I imagine every day you're surprised, like I am, Allison, of what our faculty are coming up with.
Oh, yes, exactly. You know, we have these town halls, and you were listening to one today, and
Yeah.
we have a couple hundred people every Friday on these town halls, and I'm always incredibly amazed on what's going on. And, you know, one of the strengths about UC Davis is it's got, you know, the amazing vet school that you lead, and the School of Medicine and School of Nursing, but it's got engineering and ag and law and arts and letters and all these different groups. And so we get to hear all the innovation. But, you know, one of the things that's been really incredible is the drugs that have come up in the clinical trials. So I just want to step back for our audience and talk about what clinical research is, because I think that's really important. You know, you get clinical research is where patients sign up to participate in trials, and they're very, very highly regulated. I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But it's a way you get cutting edge care. And for patients who are sick with COVID, that's how they get the state of the art care,
And
really.
yeah, and they probably, you know, that's one of the reasons people come to us, to find
Right.
out what is the next drug, the next standard of care. And so, as you mentioned, clinical trials, and we have those parallel trials going on in our veterinary hospital as well, always searching for the very next, what's the next drug, what's the next therapy that's going to be effective. So, you know, what's going on right now in some of the trials over at the hospital?
Well, so the first trial we had was the remdesivir trial, and I think we talked about
Right.
that in the
Yeah.
past. And we were able to enroll 19 patients, and that trial really led to the early approval. And now we have trials about cytokine storm, excuse me,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, so those are kind of anti-inflammatory drugs that are coming. And then there's a stem cell trial that's coming down the pike. You know, I'm really hoping sometime we're going to get outpatient trials. That will be key. But right now we've got trials focused on the antiviral and anti-inflammatory activity.
Yeah, and that's really right in line with what is coming out about the effects of the virus. And these cytokine storms are actually have been known before in other viral infections, and are a real problem for the clinicians to treat, because,
Yes.
you know, we want the immune system there to react to the infectious agent, the virus, but we don't want it to overreact. And when it continues causing those prolonged inflammatory reactions, like in the lung in particular, that can be really damaging. And because of that, you know, we have to really think about what are the mechanisms behind these so-called cytokine storms. It was mentioned today in a great article in the New York Times about various drugs being used. And I know they're in trials here at UC Davis as well. Can you tell us some about those trials?
Right. So the one is the serlulimab, and it's a drug that's originally for arthritis, and it's a monoclonal antibody. And that drug, that study is to block the protein of IL-6 in the body, and that's been recruiting patients right now. And the other thing is there's other studies coming down the pike. We haven't started some of them yet, but it's really amazing to see all the opportunities. You know, there was a lung transplant done, the first in the country.
I saw that.
And
Yeah.
one of the UC Davis researchers has a radio tracer that will detect the lung damage. And so that type of tracer would be incredible for trying to look at the lung damage because otherwise the patients get a lot of radio exposure to CTs and X-rays and things like that that we don't want to do. But it's hard to know. I mean, the lung damage is significant. So that's a huge, huge thing to be able to do that with PET tracer.
And there's a lot of collaboration between engineering, medicine, and veterinary medicine, of course, on campus. One of the exciting parts about the interdisciplinary nature of that is that when we can get better tools like that tracer to detect lung damage, it allows the clinicians to refine and grade the lesions, so that they kind of can determine, exactly where is the patient at, what kind of forms of therapy. And in these cytokine damaged lungs, if they have a better detailed orientation for that. So our radiologists are amazing with their tools, and PET scanning, as it's called, positive emission tomography, a big word, allows them to trace the active parts of that to really understand what's going on in a patient. And we use the same kind of technology in animals, and it's really helped us refine where the lesions are at, where in the body is the damage being done. And in this case, as shown by the inflammatory reaction like of children, that unusual Kawasaki's like syndrome that children get, clearly the immune system can get dysregulated or out of whack during COVID infections.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking about the PET tracer is, we have really the world famous cutting edge Explorer here at UC Davis. And I think that's, boy, we could really think about some combinations there.
What do you mean Explorer? Are they like in a ship, or what
No, 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 no. It's called the Explorer, and it's a full body PET scanner that is quite novel. Was developed with NIH money, and it allows the patient to be scanned very quickly with very low dose radiation. And I believe that you have one over on the veterinary.
We have it. We can do full body PET scans for our pets, actually. This technology is a good example. As you mentioned, it's initially federal funded, but we hope that it also attracts companies here to UC Davis because of that. And I know one of the goals that you have and the chancellor has with Aggie Square is to bring some of that technology to campus. I think in a future episode we should talk about that.
Yes, I think we should talk about what I've been telling everybody is virtual Aggie Square, but we're going to keep that for another conversation. Yeah. I also think one thing I want our listeners to know about is that, like COVID, if you are sick, you should really come to our health system because we have these cutting edge trials. And I mean, there's several of them, the monoclonal antibody, there's a stem cell one, there's, that's where you get those at a school of medicine. And those are the ones that are really out there. And it used to be that trials took months and months and months. Alzheimer's trials, for example, took years. And we are, because of the rapid cycle of the FDA and the NIH and all the pharma, everybody's just kicking in to move the needle on COVID. And this is the place where you can get those trials. We hope that we will be one of the places that has some of these vaccine trials that I keep hearing about, because, that's what we want to move to, is taking care of outpatients and preventing disease. But schools of medicine and academic health systems are the place to get the most cutting edge trials.
Well, yeah, one of the things I'm really excited about too is, people from other fields that come in on a crisis like this and bring in new tools and technologies. In your town hall today, I heard an amazing example where, I believe it was from engineering, where they're interested in following viruses, in this case, computer viruses. The methods that they look at for malware and tracing viruses is very similar to the data collected for what we do with virology and epidemiology to trace the impact of the virus and then networks of information that you have to put together. I thought that was a fascinating topic. You might, where did you come up with that? Was that a volunteer, or
Oh,
how did that talk come about?
so we've done 11 town halls, and yes, that was one of our seed grants. So we put together some money from the School of Medicine and the Provost's office and the Office of Research to fund about 300,000 in seed proposals, anywhere from 5,000 to $20,000, and that was one of the pilots. And it's really interesting because nature has some math in it, right? And you can really, if you allow yourself to kind of think, it makes sense that, those two things might be helpful. And modeling some of the things about the virus. And of course, we funded things that have to do with economics. We funded things that have to do with social. We funded a lot of things that have to do with, hardcore basic science virology research. But it's really been just incredible, all the people who have jumped in. And then of course we got funding from the president's office, and we also got some other funding about telehealth. So COVID has really allowed people to stretch their imaginations. It's been, in our hospital, we had, we were shut down for a while. We were only doing emergency things, and we've reemerged, and we're actually built up to full speed. We had this project called Restore, Renew, Reimagine that Dr. Kirk and I run. And the reimagine piece is so exciting. And I think everybody, in terms of treatments, has really jumped into the reimagine, including getting these trials up and running in record time. So it's really been just exciting. The immune response, I think, is going to be an interesting story that comes out of COVID.
Absolutely. I think the creativity that you're describing, that people bring to it, where we do actually, there is actually a whole school of thought around innovation that really requires, and sometimes bringing together people that aren't from medicine or aren't from the sciences are actually equally as important. And you mentioned modeling. One of the things that we've invested a lot in over the last decade or so is mathematical modeling, in addition to the skill sets of epidemiology and public health, people that do take those large data sets. And of course, the campus is very interested in this data science initiative, which is to really take advantage. And more our scientists, our clinicians, are needing that help from data scientists to really do that. So these mathematical modelers are taking data from all kinds of sources. One of the ones I saw this week that was fascinating is really taking International Space Station data to monitor animal movements. And of course, when we think about that, you say, well, why would we need to understand that? Because we're intricately linked between animals, people, and the environment, One Health kind of approaches, we understand that if there's an influence in the climate, for example, or if there's an influence of the environment where people are going into a diverse climate where the animals may be, they may release or come in contact with animals in a new way. And that's where COVID may have come from that disturbance of that environment. So if we can take data in a predictive model, and the idea is that you're trying to be proactive by taking that data and say, okay, if we have a drought, if we had a flood, if we had a cyclone, a hurricane, how would that change the vectors in that environment? Well, that's the kind of data these data scientists are using along with our epidemiologists. And you mentioned another really important aspect, which is social sciences, the cultural anthropology people, the people that really help us in terms of public health intervention aspects. So we're really dependent upon social science, mathematical science, modeling more and more.
Well, I would venture to say if we didn't have the predictive modeling that we've had in the country coming out of academic medical centers, by the way, we would not have done the shutdowns that we did, and we probably would have had far more deaths, because it was, and those models, and they move, and the being able to do that and take public health data, or as you said, other data, and then use it in a predictive way is cutting edge. But I also wanted to say something a little bit that you said about diversity. So, this is a great example of having a diverse group of people come together. And, that is such in the heart and soul of UC Davis, is a diverse workforce, diverse students population, and bringing all kinds of ideas in. And I think you've just hit on something about how important that is when you bring in diverse schools of thought about a problem. So you bring in some engineers and veterinarian people, and maybe we'll throw in a few of the lawyers, and all those people in to think about how we solve this
We
problem.
have to throw the lawyers into it.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
all
have
right.
I'm married to one, so
Oh, okay, all right.
we gotta throw those in too.
I'm married to a nurse, so we have
But
to
we'll
talk
throw in.
about nursing.
We've
So
got the School of Nursing, the School of Law, vet med, ag. You put all those great minds together, and you begin to say, okay, how could we solve this problem of COVID? And every time I turn around, I realize that all those other brains are looking at it from a different lens. And I think that's one thing we have to understand is I look at it from my MD lens, and you look at it from the veterinary lens. And when we bring all these other people in, it's just a different lens. And that's one of the things I think it's really taught us is the power of bringing people together with different lenses is really going to help us move things forward.
and I think that's a really important theme. Obviously in our society right now, we're facing the tension of not really recognizing the power of all of those points of view. So Black Lives Matter movement is really, while we're facing social injustice, it's also affects science. Because if we don't have the views culturally, the different aspects of that coming together, we miss out on key aspects. And right now with social disparities in healthcare, social disparities in access to education, we are losing out on that brain power, those ideas to really solve societal issues. So one thing I'd like to encourage all of our audience to become involved in is social justice. This is a heart and soul of UC Davis, and it's something that we believe in. I'm a first generation college student, and I really believe in access. It motivates me to provide access. And without those brains coming into the system, without that talent, you are not going to solve our problems that we really need in our society. So thank you for pointing that out, because that's really critical to a lot of our efforts here.
So I met with White Coats for Black Lives, 6 students this week, and it was really powerful looking and listening to their suggestions about the School of Medicine and how our health system can do some things better. And it was so wonderful that the students were so engaged in offering their suggestions. And we took lots of notes, and they were wonderful ideas. And so it's really that diversity of thought that helps move an academic institution like UC Davis forward quickly. And it's been the diversity of thought that we brought to the table early on in COVID as all of the country looked at Sacramento as the first community acquired case, and that's really helped us move everything forward. So it's truly is just the heart and soul of UC Davis. I'm so proud of everybody and how they've contributed.
That creativity really extends, when we do have that diversity of thought, that diversity of cultures come together, it goes beyond our university. It really is a global impact. So for example, some of our very best and most impactful programs are international and global. One of those is the USAID funded Predict grant. And that whole grant is really to work with many different cultures. That cultural competency is critical to allow us to do our jobs. And one of the jobs is to work with those countries in their country with their resources and really understand how can we find the sources of epidemics, but how can we build the capacity in those countries. And what's really was fascinating, even though we did not know COVID was coming along, a lot of that capacity that was built up from that PREDICT grant in those over 30 countries that that grant was in are the very first ones to be testing COVID now. And so that capacity, even though they're out of the country at this point and the grant is less well funded, they're actually left a capacity to continue that testing. So one of the revelations of innovation is that that diversity is really critical. You can't be creative if you stay in a silo. And we have not, we really consciously try to put programs together that bring those thought leaders together from multiple different cultural aspects, multiple different society distributions. And we really need to continue to do that and recruit underrepresented minorities into the sciences to really bring those ideas forward, or we're just going to be stuck. And so that's a great point.
So that is one of those things I'm so proud of the medical school for the diverse student population they have and their commitment to, as you said, social justice and really caring for people and all people, making sure they all have access. And that's one of the things as we've talked about research and we've talked about COVID and, we need to make sure that we're bringing everybody into the tent because COVID is affecting disproportionately some of the underrepresented groups, and we need to make sure that they get access also to these research trials and other things because that's incredibly important. This has been really a great discussion, Michael. It's just, I'm so looking forward to talking more about innovation during this kind of COVID. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. I'm Michael Ermore, Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine, and you've been listening to Deans Discuss COVID-19. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of these.
And I'm Allison Brashear, the Dean of the UC Davis School of Medicine. We welcome your ideas and topics for the future episodes. You can email us at deansdiscuss@ucdavis.edu. In the meantime, you can visit ucdavis.edu/COVID-19 for the latest coronavirus research and news from UC Davis. We'll see you next week.